welcome to our Grief and End of Life Conference. And I'm very excited about our event today. But before we do anything, we are in the house of the Lord. We're going to ask Ms. McCrory if she would come and open us up with prayer.
I want to also say good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
Lord, it's me again, Lord. Lord, I come in your name, asking for favor for everyone that's here, Lord. I come, Lord, just standing up on your word, Lord. Just lead us and guide us, Lord, in the things that you would have us to do, Lord. Just make this grief counseling whatever you would have it to be, Lord. Let it be information that someone can take, Lord, and live by. Just help us, Lord, to do your will, to do things that's right, pleasing in your sight. Strengthen us, Lord, where we are weak. Lift us up, Lord, where we are torn down. Lord, I just pray for health and strength, Lord, for everyone that's in here, Lord. I just give you all the glory, Lord. I give you all the honor. I give you all the praises, Lord. There's none worthy but you, God.
Yes.
Lord, I just can't thank you enough, Lord. Thank you. All the things that you've done for me, for the things that you're going to do for all of us, Lord. And I ask these things in Jesus' name, I pray.
Amen.
Again, I'm going to tell you, I am also the owner of Carolina Community Connection, which is a mentorship program and a community program to link resources with those who have need and to help young or anyone who wants to start a business or to grow their business and work within our communities, because a lot of times we have our communities and our outsiders come in, and we want to start utilizing our own resources within our own communities, which is why our guests today are within our own community. And I want to thank our guests for coming out. We have with us Ms. Margaret McFadden. She is a licensed counselor. She has her own services.
Huggins.
We have Ms. Tiffany
Huggins.
Huggins. And I was going to say Huggins earlier. Ms. Tiffany Huggins, she's from Charleston. We say Huggins around here. But she prefers Huggins. And she is also a licensed counselor and has her own services. Then we have the fabulous Miss Monique Ramsuer, Robinson Funeral Home, my girl. She is going to bring us some end-of-life information that will help us and our families to prepare for end-of-life events. And a lot of times everybody says, I don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about that, but we need that. Because who has to go and bury someone else because they were unprepared, or take care of arrangements because somebody was unprepared? But I'm going to stay in my lane. I will open up. I have a few things to talk about. It's hard to have a conference when it's unrelatable. As your facilitator, I felt that it'd be appropriate for me to start off and bring you a bit of my story and why I feel like this is an appropriate event to have for our community. My presentation, and these are our co-sponsors, your mental health matters. And how many of you agree with that? Your mental health matters. It really does matter, okay? A lot of times we think that that's the last on the list. We think about spirituality, we think about our physical, but sometimes we leave out our mental. And believe it, if that mental is shaken up, a whole lot of other stuff is out of whack, okay? When you think about your self-worth, does your mental health hold a place of priority? A lot of times it doesn't. It's at the bottom. But if it does, you are healthier, wiser, more confident in yourself, that when you make that a priority. But when you put it on the bottom, you're only taking care of it because everything else is falling apart. Am I right? So when you prioritize what is the most important in your life, how far down the list does protecting and taking care of your mental health? How far down the list? At one time, I thought it was most appropriate if I take care of everybody else. Take care of their needs, look out for them, make sure my pastor is straight, making sure the ministries are straight, taking care of business. And then what I found out was, Iris, you're a little off on some things. You're shaken mentally. You need to take care of yourself. Have you ever allowed stigmas of society to keep you from doing a self-check on your mental health? This is what happens in the military. And some of you know that I have PTSD, and I suffer with depression, and a lot of those things while serving in the military. In the military, you're going to see a professional or seeing someone in psychiatric or psychologist or even just a regular counselor. It was frowned upon. It was frowned upon in the military. Nobody wanted to go, especially if you were of higher rank, because they felt like they would find you unable to hold your post, and the next thing you would be doing is being out-processed or passed over for promotion because they felt you weren't stable enough. That is how it has been in the military. When I come home, I found out it's the same way in our communities. You know, who wants to be told if you're going to get counseled, oh, you crazy, or something wrong with you? We have to grow up. We need to grow up. We need to grow up about our own mental health. If you think of yourself like that, what is everybody else going to think about you? Same thing. Let's go to our next slide. Mind over matter. How many of you heard this cliche? Mind over matter. If you don't mind, then it don't matter. You heard that before? We heard that cliche, right? That's garbage. That is garbage. We need to strike it down, cross it out, and get it out of our mindset. Because whatever you think, so a man is. That's what the Bible says. We have to realize what's going on in our mind affects everything about us. I learned this the hard way by not recognizing that whatever I got poured into my mind affected everything else I did. How I treated people, how I allowed people to treat me, because I was worried and thinking a certain type of way, even though it wasn't really my reality. I was off. When it comes to your mental health, this phrase is garbage. It is just a cliche. Okay? Not only do you need to be aware of your mental health, but you also need to be kind to your mind. I love this. Being kind to your mind. I love this. I started meditating. I started to have my quiet time, which I should have been doing anyway, in my Bible studies and my personal moments with God. But I found like I felt like I was going through emotions. I was just, hitting that scripture, reading it, and that was it. That was nothing to it. But I wasn't taking the time to let it absorb inside of me. Taking that time to relax my mind. If you want to know why God is speaking to you, because you got too much stuff going on in your mind, because He can't get through all the traffic that's going on in your mind. Iris. He can't talk to you because your mind's too busy. Iris. Sit down somewhere. Iris. Be kind to your mind. Start and get rid of all the other garbage I was putting in. Facebook, TikTok, all kind of other stuff I was feeding my mind with, but I was not feeding my mind with the things that took care of me and helped me to be kind to my mind. So, I'm not saying I don't look at that stuff every now and then, but my priorities have changed. My focus on what I put into my mind matters. Sometimes you have to steal away. How many of y'all steal away every now and then? Jesus stole away. He had no time for prayer. But sometimes you have to steal away and find some places of solitude so you can be kind to your mind. Great investment. These ladies that are here are going to be giving a presentation. They're going to help you understand why your mental health is taking care of your mental health and self-care is a great investment in your life. feel that now that I have began to be kind to my mind, have self-care, that I'm in a better place. I had somebody tell me, girl, you're a lot nicer than you used to be. You're a lot more considerate than you used to be. Oh, you take the time, you don't run all over, everybody's talking, you actually let people talk. I didn't realize I was doing that. I had some people who were invested in me before I was investing in myself. But mental health, self-care, I started investing in myself. It's the greatest investment that I've had outside of my spirituality. People said I had a positive outlook. I was a lot more resilient because I didn't give up. Because I used to give up right quick. My temper was bad, and I didn't want to be bothered. I was short, and the next thing you know, it was over with. What are we still talking about? That's how short and nasty I was to people, because I was just done. They say you live longer when you take care of your mental health. Again, just like I said in the beginning, you don't take care of it, it begins to affect other parts of your body. I've heard stories of people who had given up on life, had mental health issues, and then their bodies began to deteriorate right along with it. You got to pour some stuff into your life that's going to be positive and help you to grow. Otherwise, the negativity will begin to affect everything else. Controlling stress. Yeah, that was me. My hair fell out. Just gained all kind of weight, stress eating. But now I can help control my stress because I invested in me. Making you more tolerable by others and vice versa. That's what I was talking about. That shortness, that nice, nice and nasty at the same time. That was me. And so these ladies are going to be the ones that you talk to. But sometimes you can't get to a professional counselor. Sometimes you don't have the insurances to do those things. That is what the ministerial staff here at our church and other churches are there for. Sometimes you just need to tap into all the resources that are available. Tap into the resources that you have. If you can't get to a counselor, they say call your pastor. You can't get the pastor, call your associate. We got 9 associates here in Cedar Grove. Now, I'm not going to say every one of us is equipped to do psychological. We will refer. But we can be a shoulder for you to lean on. We can be a place where you can come and know that what you bring to us is confidential. We won't share it with anyone else. We can bring the resource that we know, which is the Word of God, to help you cope. That is our job here at our churches. And sometimes we may need to get more education to become more equipped to help cope. But that is a personal decision. But we are here. Back in when I was in the military, we had what's called speaker-listener skills. Speaker-listener skills. That means you do more listening than you do speaking. Struggle. Because this one always had an opinion. Okay? So these young ladies will help you, and they're going to give you that. So I'm going to keep on going past that. Benefits of counseling: regaining emotional balance, better relationships, less anxiety, greater self-confidence, trauma resolution, ability to set boundaries, stress relief, increased assertiveness. I can come back to this when y'all come up. We can bring the slide back out for my professional counselors that are here. There's professional counseling. That's what these ladies do. There's group counseling. I talk about group. Sometimes you don't want to be by yourself when you're talking to someone. And you need to be in a group with some people who are relatable or unrelatable so you feel comfortable talking in front of other people's group. Maybe the way that you go. And then there's pastoral care and counseling, which is what I just spoke about. The actual official pastoral care and counseling requires licensing. My prayer is that everyone finds what I found in the counsel of the Lord and in those He placed in my path to help me be a better me. I am so grateful. And I want that for everyone else. I pray that we all consider ourselves and be kind to our minds. I pray that our minds be in Christ Jesus. I pray that we all make the time to love ourselves enough to invest in our mental health, because our mental health matters. It really does. So, that's my mental health piece for me. But I also want to tell you that this mental health grief conference comes out of the losses that we've all sustained. We've lost some people. Over the last 2.5 years, COVID, we're considered to be in post-pandemic, but we lost some people. And we didn't know how to grieve at that moment. A lot of us kept a lot of things bottled up. A lot of us still are having anxiety about, not being there for our families because we couldn't be together. Cedar Grove buried quite a few people, members and non-members, in a lot of churches in our communities. They buried a lot of people. And in this room alone, everybody in here can relate to losing someone, friend or family member, someone we knew, we went to school with. But what do? Do we have that outlet that we have right now where we can just call up somebody and go visit somebody and sit down with somebody? No, we had protocols that were in place that kept us apart. So therefore, the grieving process never really surfaced. We never could get through the levels of grief because we didn't know where to go and how to deal with it. But it's time for us to wring out our sponge. And let me explain. We often are sponges. We absorb everything that's going on around us. We absorb not only our own issues, but we absorb the issues of others. And we continue to absorb. And then we find ourselves with a very, very soaked sponge that we never wring out. I am one of those sponges. I find out that I'm just kind of an unreasonable person, a person nobody wanted to deal with. And then I have people who love me enough to tell me it's time to wring out your sponge. So today, I hope that everybody is ready to wring out their sponge, to let go of the things that are keeping us from growing, to let go of the grief. Now, everybody grieves differently. The way I deal with my grief and how you deal with your grief, how I deal with my mental health issues, how you deal with your mental health issues are all different. But we must all have an outlet. We must wring out our sponges because we can't keep absorbing and expect for our sponge to be efficient and effective. We have to wring out our sponge. So today, I hope that this conference helps you to wring out your sponge. No, we're not going to have that 100% thing that's going to help you just walk away, grief, gone. No, we want to equip you with tools. So our next person's coming up is Miss Margaret McFadden and Miss Tiffany Huggins. They're going to come up and tag team the overall grief process, mental health, and we will then be followed by Miss Monique. You ladies have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. How y'all doing?
Good morning.
Good. Thank you, Minister Dickerson, for this opportunity to come and share with you all about grief counseling and how you manage your grief post-pandemic. What is grief? Grief is those feelings that you have inside when someone passes away or someone dies. Mourning is expressing that grief when you are after that person has died. Minister Dickerson shared some fabulous points. Mind. Your mind. That's where you have all your battles. All your battles are in your mind. So if your mind isn't healthy, how can you manage anything that comes your way? We talk about the physical aspects of it. We talk about going to the doctor, spirituality, but the battle is still here. So if you don't have your mind in a place where you can definitely breathe the way you need to breathe, it is going to be a challenge. She also said something about dealing with your mental health and it being unique to you. I've never told this story in public. I'm gonna try to do it today. So bear with me. Yeah, okay. All right. So in 2015, April 11, 2015, everybody was gathered around my dad's bed. We knew the time was coming for him to transition on. Were we prepared? My mom is a praying lady. It's 12 of us. We were brought up in the church. We knew who God was. We knew the life cycle. We knew what life was about. So when it was time for him to transition, it was, okay, we know what to expect. We know how things are going to happen. Research, science, everything I've been taught teaches me the 5 stages of loss and grief. You got anger. You got denial. You got shock. You got bargaining. You have acceptance. But I didn't go through those. So I was like, okay, everything I've been taught, everything I've learned, I'm defying the odds. What it didn't tell me was what I was going to feel was hurt. We already knew that. We knew the life cycle. We knew what was going to happen. But how do you deal with the hurt? I never blamed God because of my foundation. That wasn't who I am. I accepted it up front because we knew what the life cycle is. But how do you deal with the feelings? How do you deal with the hurt? How do you go through that? When he passed away, it was 3 days that I didn't want to leave my house, didn't want to get out of my bed. I cried. I just stayed there. So I dealt with that pain. That pain is unbearable. If you guys have it, it's an unbearable pain. I can't even describe the pain. Then he came to me. He was like, I can't say what he said to me in this church, but he told me to get out of bed. He said, get up, move. I didn't go home to help plan or do anything because that's just not where I was. I'm only counseling my family, so that's where I was. I didn't go to plan. My mom understood. My siblings understood. I sent, what my wishes were for the funeral service. I sent that to them, and my mom was okay with playing. It was just 2 songs that I wanted her to play. Life went on. As a licensed professional counselor, you cope. You don't feel. You teach people how to manage life that comes to them. But now we gotta allow people to feel. In our culture, you're taught not to feel. Your life happens. Handle it, keep on moving. Like Minister Dickerson was saying, we soak up. We soak up, we fill that sponge up with so much stuff because we don't have time to feel. We don't have time to be down. We got stuff we got to take care of. We got families we got to take care of. We got whatever life, work, etc. After we buried my father, my son was graduating from high school. It seems like everything that happens in my family happens around my children's birthdays, happen around anniversaries that pertain to me. And I'm like, okay, God, what you trying to do to me? But it always happens around something with my children. So my son turned 18. We buried my dad the next day. We were intentional not to bury my father on my son's birthday because we didn't want that connection. Granddaddy died, and he was my dad's cat. So granddaddy died, and they buried him. So we buried my dad the day after my son's birthday. But life went on. So I had a son graduate from college, high school, a son going to college. I had my other children. So I didn't have time to feel. About 6 months later, and you've probably heard, 6 months afterwards, keep checking on those people at least 6 months later, because that's when grief really sets in, and you really get that opportunity to feel. 6 months went by. I'm like, okay, I'm good. Christmas hit. I shut down. It's like, what is this? What's going on? The people I reached out to at that time, they told me, I don't know how to help you. You've always kept it together. You've always been a strong person. I don't know what to tell you. And I'm like, well, what is this? When I need a shoulder to lean on, they have nothing to offer me. So I was like, well, maybe I need to stop being a strong person. So I'm still working on that. Work in progress. Still working on that. So December hit, and that's when I started to feel. So what do I do with this feeling? these feelings. I have a very supportive family. So I would call, I had a sister who was up all the time, like 3 o'clock at night. You know, it's like, why I'm up, Lord? Why I'm up? I gotta feel. I gotta process. I gotta believe. I gotta deal with whatever is happening right now with me. A year to the day my dad died, I made a life-changing decision. I quit my job. I quit my job being a school counselor and went into private practice full time. Not by my own decision. Me and God talk about this thing now. I'm not going to do that. We got to get some things in order. But just sharing that story lets you know that grief is unique to you. Mm-hmm. Grief doesn't skip anybody. It's going to definitely hit you when you least expect it. But one thing that you have to make sure you do is implement boundaries. Well, 2 things. Implement boundaries and take care of yourself. We have that tendency to overfunction. Somebody died, I gotta help this person, I gotta go do this, I gotta do that. I'm not eating the things I need to eat. I'm not eating anything because I'm running constantly, making sure that everybody else's needs are met. And here I am, dwindling away. My mom thought I was crazy. My cousin was sitting on the porch with us at my dad's grandmother. She said, go in the house and fix me something to eat. And I looked at her and I said, I'm the one grieving. You go fix me something to eat. I'm not going to fix you anything to eat. I was like, she's like, well, why you? No, the grieving people shouldn't have to cater to the guests. The guests need to cater to the people who are grieving. Say it again. Because we're going through some changes and it's tough. It's tough when it comes to grieving, but the first thing you have to let yourself do is feel. Just lost one of my uncles, my mother-in-law. I'm talking to her. She's a licensed social worker. And she told me everything she knew went out the window. I said, are you eating? She said, I think I had 3 strips of bacon and 2 eggs this morning. You don't know it. It's 8 o'clock at night. Let's make sure you're eating something. You know what grief, there's come nausea. You know, you have all those other symptoms that go along with grieving. But you have to find something that's going to nourish your body so you can be able to care for the people that you want to tend to. Another thing is don't insert yourself in people's problems. If I don't come to you and say, I need help, don't come and think, I need you to help me. just ask me, what do you need? And I'll be able to tell you what I need. If I say nothing, or just sit with me, or just let me talk, let me talk. So when you're going through your grief, you got to be sure that you know what you're feeling. A lot of people excuse rude and disrespectful behavior because they're grieving. We still got to let them know you can't respond like that. So if you're hurting and somebody passed away, you can't curse me out because, hey, you're grieving. Come on now. Come on now. We all have those feelings, but we have to help those people channel those feelings and deal with those feelings appropriately. Once you acknowledge that pain, once you give yourself permission to grieve, then let everything else fall into place. We got the boundaries. We have healthy eating behaviors. We have let me feel this pain and then I'll deal with X, Y, Z. You also have to take care of yourself physically. I started exercising. So I'm going to go exercise and do some things. It took a long time, probably a year or 2 before I could go spend the night in my mama's house. Even when I go there now, I see him sitting in his favorite chair. Or if I walk through the house at night, I see him sitting beside the bathroom. And I'm like, okay, we good. We good. I've handled this. I've processed. This year was the most challenging year for me. Usually I know that week in April, something's going to feel off. So when I know it's off, it's like, what's going on with me? I'm grieving. Grief is reoccurring. So don't think it's going to end.
Yes.
Just because the person, the funeral has happened and everything else has transpired. Grief is reoccurring. So if it hits you, be ready to process those feelings in a healthy manner. I think I mentioned earlier, I have 11 brothers and sisters. I couldn't put in the group chat, hey, I'm having a tough time this year, because that would have triggered everybody. So I'm respectful of how they're feeling and how they're processing their grief as well. So I put it into my sorority group chat. And when I tell you my sisters came to bat, I was just emotional. I was just going through a lot. I was like, man. And it was 2015 and now 8 years? 8 years. And it resurfaced. But I figured out what it was. It wasn't, I need to excuse this. No, keep going, keep going, keep going. No, you don't have to keep going. If nobody ever told you, I'm giving you permission today to feel. Feel whatever it is you feel. If you're hurt, you're disappointed, you're angry, feel those feelings. Now, we all know we can feel what we feel, but we can't stand on those feelings. We got to make sure we keep those feelings in check when we are grieving. Boundaries are so important. I touched base on that about inserting yourself. Make sure you don't overfunction and make sure you don't enable chaos and disrespect. You can pull that person to the side and say, hey, I know you're going through some things, so let me have you, can you talk, or let's go for a walk. You can just be that listening ear. Don't feel like I gotta fix whatever is happening with this person. Give them the opportunity to feel what they feel, express their feelings. Some things I like to do when I'm working with my clients who are going through grief, we do a memory box. And in that memory box, you would get a shoebox, whatever it is that you have at home. We'll decorate it, and you put little mementos in there that reminds you of your loved one. So whenever you start feeling some type of way, or you start grieving, not feeling some type of way, you start grieving, you can go get that box, and you have those mementos of that person so you can focus on those positive memories. You can also journal your feelings and your memories, but everybody loves a memory box. And they like to create that. You can create it on your own. You can also write a letter to the deceased. At that time when my dad died, the funeral director was like, y'all can write a letter. We got a little box inside and put it in the box. And I was like, not doing that. My siblings took advantage of it, but I had conversations. We had conversations. So I didn't have the need. I didn't need to write the letter to the deceased. I have a box now of cards I hadn't even opened that people sent me when they knew my dad passed away. So whenever I start feeling some type of way, I go. Whenever I start breathing, I'm sorry. Whenever I'm hurt, frustrated, angry, or missing my dad, I will go pull that box out and open a card. And I don't know what made them think that I will need this later, but it's helpful. Everything my sorority sister sent to me on April the 18th, I had it in my journal. So April 18th next year, when I start feeling breathing, I can go back to that and looking at and get some reassurance, some encouragement on top of just knowing that, hey, I was missing my dad, and that's okay. So the main thing I want you guys to remember that it's okay to feel, and know that counseling isn't bad. Because if my mind isn't right, how can I function? We have the spiritual leaders. We have the integration of spirituality and Christianity in counseling. So if you come to me or Miss Huggins, if you go see her, we're going to ask you, what are your spiritual religious views? And when we hear what your spiritual religious views, we're going to ask you, do you want to incorporate that into it? We can talk scripture all day. And what I don't understand, I got my ministers on standby. Hey, I don't understand the scripture. Help me understand this better so I can help the people that I'm working with. So you still have Jesus and you still have your therapist. Take advantage of both of them because we integrate both into what we do as therapists and patients. I think I'm going to be quiet for a little bit and pass it on to Ms. Huggins.
Thank you. Good morning again. My name is Tiffany Huggins. I am a licensed professional counselor, and I have a private practice that focuses on loss and grief and life transitions. And I focus on both of those as a specialty because, as it's been stated already, grief is something that we cannot avoid. And as a licensed professional counselor, I'm also a grief educator. So I do take time to work with my clients, work with the community in educating about grief and about bereavement, mourning, and what all that entails. And so something that I want to highlight today, and I am going to pull off of some of Margaret's testimony, grief is not just related to death. a lot of times that is where we focus on a death of a loved one or a death of a pet even, but grief is related to anything that we're separated from that has a great meaning to us. So as Margaret mentioned, she lost her dad. At the same time, she experienced a transition of her son going to college. Mm-hmm. I can't speak for her as far as what that entailed as far as grief, but I know that is her oldest child. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure in some aspects, mm-hmm. right, your oldest baby is leaving the home, going to college. There's an element of grief that is to be expected. Now, how it shows up, that's individual, right? But there is an expectation of some sort of grief. And I like to highlight that because a lot of times, like Margaret mentioned, we go through things and we don't give honor to how it impacts us. A lot of times we are going through life, we don't honor that those things that we are experiencing, whether or not it's having a baby, getting married, our children leaving for school, losing a job, health changes. There's an element of grief to that impacts us sometimes the same way in which there is a death that we're responding to. And so with that, as we're going through life, as we're experiencing grief, we begin to have patterns, grief patterns. How we grieve tends to show up in different ways. If we are not honoring that, we will lose sight of who we are and what works for us when we are managing our grief. And so Margaret mentioned one thing for her is, allowing herself to feel the feelings. And that's very important in grief because if you do not allow yourself to feel them, they're going to show up anyways. Mm-hmm. Like that is not something that you can control effectively. We like to try to be in control, especially when we're going through things, because we could not control whatever happens in our lives. And so sometimes we try to gain control over our feelings, over other situations. And trust me, they will pop up one way or the other if you do not allow yourself to feel them and express them. So that's also important. And so Margaret mentioned the stages of grief and sometimes how that can throw us off because we can feel like we're not doing it correctly if we're not, okay, I'm not depressed, I'm not angry. And so that can harm us in some way if we're so focused on stages. So I would also like to present to you possibly focusing on tasks. And so there is research that states that there are different tasks that is helpful for us, such as one, accepting the reality of the loss. And that can be hard because sometimes you can be going through life and something happens and it hits you. Oh, this person is not here. Oh, I'm never going to experience being a parent, whatever the case may be. So there is an element as you move through, you have to accept the reality. And then also, as it was mentioned, is allowing yourself to feel the feelings. And again, this happens as you go through life. It's not just something like a death happens and you do all of these things and then it's over. There is secondary losses that happens because of an initial loss that impacts the grief journey all over again. So allowing yourself to feel the feelings, to experience those feelings, to express those feelings in a healthy way as well. And then there's the task of adjusting. And that's where a lot of my work comes in as far as how do you adjust to these different life situations, life transitions? How do you make sense of what is happening around you? And then finally being able to readjust or reinvest your energy into whatever your new world is. And so when we're going through grief and we're going through loss, it is like our world has been shattered. And so now we are left trying to pick up the pieces, knowing they're not going to fit together just the same way that they did, but somehow we have to make it work. And in my eyes, that is the work of grief, trying to figure out how do I live, how do I make this work with this loss as a part of my life now. So I think that, if we're able to kind of look at what are the things that I probably need to focus on as I'm going through this grief journey, that can help us versus the feeling like I have to reach a certain stage. And if I don't do that, then I'm not doing it correctly. And so with that, there is no correct way to grieve. Now, there are healthy and unhealthy ways. And so in counseling, we can talk about what is healthy, what is unhealthy. As Margaret mentioned, if you're not eating, that is not the most healthy way to maybe take care of yourself. And so in a counseling session, we will highlight, okay, what are some of these things that you're doing? What are your patterns? How are you taking care of yourself? And so one thing that I also highlight is don't compare yourself to others. That is very challenging because especially when you're in a family and your brother or sister is responding one way and it doesn't look like how you're responding, naturally we start to question ourselves. Okay, well, let me stop crying because they're not crying and it's been 2 weeks and they're not crying, so I shouldn't cry. Your grief is yours. Your grief is unique to you, and that is okay. And once you allow yourself permission to experience your grief and go through your grief journey and stop fighting it, you will see that you're able to process it in a different way. And I think that is so very important that we allow ourselves to experience that. And it was mentioned early on by Minister Dickerson in terms of the pandemic. And one thing I really want to highlight in regards to the pandemic, we went through a collective grief. Even we could say a collective trauma, because I know for myself, never have experienced anything like that before. And so the change of our world and the way that we had to show up in the world, very traumatizing. And so there is an element of collective grief that we have been experiencing and still are experiencing as we are what we feel like on the other side of this pandemic. And again, how do we readjust and reinvest into the world that has changed from pre-pandemic? And so, like I said, I like to give honor to the experiences that we have. And so as you're moving through, as you're going forward, if you feel yourself, you know what, I'm not too sure I want to be in crowds, recognize, where is that coming from? Is that a grief response related to the pandemic? You know, if you find yourself kind of clinging to family members in a different way, could that be a grief response related to the pandemic because you could not be with family? You didn't know when was the next time you were going to be able to be with them. So there are different things in how we respond even now that can be related to what happened and what we experienced during the pandemic. So I did want to highlight that. And then lastly, before Ms. Monique comes up, I also want to highlight, you know, we do not talk about death. We do not talk about loss, although we know what's going to happen. And so we have to face the realities that there are things that we can do. Now, all death we cannot prepare for. There's accidents, murders, suicide. There's some things that we just cannot prepare for. However, there are things that we can prepare for, because like I said, we do know that death is going to reach each and every one of us. And a lot of times in working with families, one of the hardest things is trying to make decisions right after someone has died. And so the more that we are able to make some of those decisions to help our loved ones, right? To help those who are survivors who are here with us, making those decisions, mapping out what we want to happen, don't want to happen, whatever the case may be, that puts our loved ones in a better position to take care of themselves versus having to make all these decisions to take care of the business that prolongs our grief. Now, for some of us, like me, I'm just a planner. So I'm probably going to make sure things are right and whatnot. But definitely, as we're thinking about our loved ones and the care for them, even after we're gone, making sure that we are setting them up for success versus failure. Because, again, making those decisions can be very hard for a family member in the midst of grief. And so I do want to leave that with you all. And then lastly, I do want to highlight some things that Margaret said as far as like taking care of yourself, because I think that is very important, and taking care of others. With grief, I know it is uncomfortable. It's not something that we want to experience, but we will have to. But there is great opportunity for growth through our grief. I found that a lot of clients that I've worked with, and even myself, is you learn so much about yourself when you go through life challenges that it helps set you up and it helps prepare you for other things that life has to bring. And so instead of shying away from the feelings, shying away from whatever thoughts that you have, allow yourself to lean into it. Because you will learn, again, like I said, about yourself, about what is needed here. Oh, I'm never going to experience being a parent, whatever the case may be. So there is an element as you move through, you have to accept the reality. And then also, as it was mentioned, is allowing yourself to feel the feelings. And again, this happens as you go through life. It's not just something like a death happens and you do all of these things and then it's over. There is secondary losses that happens because of an initial loss that impacts the grief journey all over again. So allowing yourself to feel the feelings, to experience those feelings, to express those feelings in a healthy way as well. And then there's the task of adjusting. And that's where a lot of my work comes in, as far as how do you adjust to these different life situations, life transitions? How do you make sense of what has happened around you? And then finally, being able to readjust or reinvest your energy into whatever your new world is. And so when we're going through grief and we're going through loss, it is like our world has been shattered. And so now we are left trying to pick up the pieces, knowing they're not going to fit together just the same way that they did, but somehow we have to make it work. And in my eyes, that is the work of grief, trying to figure out, how do I live? How do I make this work with this loss as a part of my life now? So I think, if we're able to kind of look at what are the things that I probably need to focus on as I'm going through this grief journey, that can help us versus the feeling like I have to reach a certain stage. And if I don't do that, then I'm not doing it correctly. Mm-hmm. And so with that, there is no correct way to grieve. Now, there are healthy and unhealthy ways. And so in counseling, we can talk about what is healthy, what is unhealthy. As Margaret mentioned, if you're not eating, that is not the most healthy way to maybe take care of yourself. And so in a counseling session, we will highlight, okay, what are some of these things that you're doing? What are your patterns? How are you taking care of yourself? And so one thing that I also highlight is, don't compare yourself to others. That is very challenging, because especially when you're in a family and your brother or sister is responding one way and it doesn't look like how you're responding, naturally we start to question ourselves. Okay, well, let me stop crying because they're not crying and it's been 2 weeks and they're not crying, so I shouldn't cry. Your grief is yours. Your grief is unique to you, and that is okay. And once you allow yourself permission to experience your grief and go through your grief journey and stop fighting it, you will see that you're able to process it in a different way. And I think that is so very important that we allow ourselves to experience that. And it was mentioned early on by Minister Dickerson in terms of the pandemic. And one thing I really want to highlight in regards to the pandemic, we went through a collective grief, even we could say a collective trauma, because I know for myself, never have experienced anything like that before. And so the change of our world and the way that we had to show up in the world, very traumatizing. And so there is an element of collective grief that we have been experiencing and still are experiencing as we are what we feel like on the other side of this pandemic. And again, how do we readjust and reinvest into the world that has changed from pre-pandemic? And so, like I said, I like to give honor to the experiences that we have. And so as you're moving through, as you're going forward, if you feel yourself, you know what, I'm not too sure I want to be in crowds, recognize where is that coming from? Is that a grief response related to the pandemic? You know, if you find yourself kind of clinging to family members in a different way, could that be a grief response related to the pandemic because you could not be with family? You didn't know when was the next time you were going to be able to be with them. So there are different things in how we respond even now that can be related to what happened and what we experienced during the pandemic. So I did want to highlight that. And then lastly, before Ms. Monique comes up, I also want to highlight, we do not talk about death. We do not talk about loss, although we know it's going to happen. And so we have to face the realities that there are things that we can do. Now, all death we cannot prepare for. There's accidents, murders, suicide. There's some things that we just cannot prepare for. However, there are things that we can prepare for because, like I said, we do know that death is going to reach each and every one of us. And a lot of times in working with families, one of the hardest things is trying to make decisions right after someone has died. And so the more that we are able to maybe make some of those decisions to help our loved ones, right, to help those who are survivors who are here with us, making those decisions, mapping out what we want to happen, don't want to happen, whatever the case may be, that puts our loved ones in a better position to take care of themselves versus having to make all these decisions to take care of the business that prolongs our grief. Now, for some of us, like me, I'm just a planner. So I'm probably going to make sure things are right and whatnot. But definitely, as we're thinking about our loved ones and the care for them, even after we're gone, making sure that we are setting them up for success versus failure. Because, again, making those decisions can be very hard for a family member in the midst of grief. And so I do want to leave that with you all. And then lastly, I do want to highlight some things that Margaret said as far as like taking care of yourself, because I think that is very important, and taking care of others. With grief, I know it is uncomfortable. It's not something that we want to experience, but we will have to. But there is great opportunity for growth through our grief. I found that a lot of clients that I've worked with, and even myself, is you learn so much about yourself when you go through life challenges that it helps set you up and help prepare you for other things that life has to bring. And so instead of shying away from the feelings, shying away from whatever thoughts that you have, allow yourself to lean into it. Because you will learn, again, like I said, about yourself, about what is needed for you, and how you can best transform this loss into something great. Now, it may take time to get there, and that is okay, but that's on the other side of the darkness that comes with grief. So we will be here to answer any questions that you may have later on, but now I will turn the floor over to Ms. Monique. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Monique Ramsuer. I'm the owner of Robinson Funeral Home. One of the biggest things that I am faced with every day is, dealing with families. And we have different scenarios that we deal with. But before I get into that, I want to give you some points to ponder. We will prepare for births. We will prepare for weddings and graduations and birthday parties. But we will not prepare for passing. In the Bible, there are things regarding death throughout the entire Bible. Ecclesiastes says, there's a time to be born and there's a time to die. Jesus said, be ye ready, for you know not the hour nor the day when the Son of Man will come. At Easter time, we will fill up a church on Sunday, and we're celebrating, Jesus' death and his resurrection. But from Ash Wednesday up until that point, Jesus is preparing. Mm-hmm. He knows what's coming. He's preparing, and he prepared his disciples for his leaving. I'm sure everyone has heard during services that heaven is a prepared place for prepared people. Yet we don't do it. Come on. Nobody wants to talk about death, but you're not going to get out of this alive. And my thing is, be prepared. And on a personal note, my father, as a lot of people know, my father passed away in January. My father prepared us. He talked to us, and several years ago, he sat my sister and myself down, and he was like, I want y'all to get a piece of paper, and so right with, I'm going to tell you what it is that I want. So we knew what was coming down the line. We knew that his time was winding down. Not only did he tell us, but we knew. Even though it was difficult when he passed, on one respect, it was very easy as far as carrying out his wishes. Everything was done. We didn't have to figure out, well, what did he want? Who did he want to speak? Or what would he, where did he want to be buried? All of that was taken care of ahead of time. So it made the transition on that behalf smooth. Now, I'm going to take it personal again for another scenario. With my stepmother, she passed away in 2018. Unfortunately, she had gotten dementia. And so she had been in a nursing home for about 7 years prior to her passing. So she never had any kind of directives, pertaining to healthcare, what her wishes were. So we were faced with that, having to make these decisions. And then as her health started declining, then we had to have more of those heart-wrenching, conversations with family about, okay, what do you think mother would want? Whereas with daddy, he already had that stuff done. So all we had to do was follow what he said. So I cannot impress upon everyone enough to have an idea of what you want. Put your wishes down on paper. I will have people come to me at funeral services and say, Monique, when I die, I want you to do this, this, and this, and this. And I'll be like, babe, I said, you can tell me this all day long. I say, but when something happens to you and your family comes in, and I'll be like, well, Miss Clara said she wanted such, such, and such. They're going to be looking at me upside my head. I always tell them, write down what your wishes are. Where do you want to be buried? Where do you want your service? If you want, if you have specific people that you want to be on your program, who you want to speak, who you would want to do the eulogy, who you would want to do remarks, have all of that stuff written down somewhere. So that way, if something does happen to you, your family doesn't have to try to figure these things out. Another important thing I think that you need to have as well is health directives. As far as like if you become incapacitated, do you want to be fed by a feeding tube? Or would you want to be resuscitated? Or, any of these things, if you're more specific about what your wishes are, and you have it in writing, your family, all they have to do is just say, okay, this is what mama said she wanted, this is what she said she did not want. There's literature out there. There is a booklet, actually, that I brought today. It's called 5 Wishes. And in that book, it breaks it down. If I have a go into a coma, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. It will also, you would be able to assign whoever you would want to be to handle those, make those arrangements and make those decisions for you. So then that way, if something happens, because we all know, we don't know what's going to happen from one second to the next. It used to be we say here today, gone tomorrow. That's not even true anymore. They're here today and they're gone today. So that is another thing that I was going to say is just to make sure that, if you get a chance to just think about the things that you would want and write them down. Another thing I always say is, I'll have families come in and their loved one passed away, and they're like, well, we don't know what mama or daddy has because they won't talk to them and tell them anything. I've had that as well. And, I think the biggest gift of love that you can leave your family when you leave here is to take the stress off of them, to have it there. Let one of your children or let your loved one or whoever you're closest to, let them know where you have your important papers. So in case something does happen to you, they know exactly where they need to go and to get these things. Another thing, and I'm probably going to step on some toes, but that's okay because I'm doing what I feel I need to do. GoFundMe is not life insurance. Say it again. GoFundMe is not life insurance. You can get an insurance policy. They have different policies. They have term policies. They have whole life policies. Whichever one you feel is going to serve you best. And if not that, then, some people don't want to do insurance. They also have what they call pre-need burial contracts, where you can put money aside and that money will be used for your funeral services. Or you can pick out what you want and make payments on it. It's like layaway. And trust me, we know about layaway. But, to have something because, this is going to happen. Why not prepare for this? I can't say this enough because I try to let people know that. Instead of leaving debt, leave a legacy. Like with your real estate, with a house or cars and things like that. Let me tell you, if you do not have a will, and say you have, let's say if a mother passed away and she's got 5 children, she has no will. Well, legally, all of the children have equal right to be the personal representative of her estate. But this is what I see sometimes. You have one that has been the one that has taken care of everything and been responsible. Then you got all the other ones that really didn't do exactly what they should have done, but they don't want to give you the right to be the person who represented. Then what happens is, over time, nothing gets done. They stop making payments like for the insurance and the house and the taxes. And guess what? The house that mama and daddy worked so hard to build to provide you with a home, somebody else buys it as a tax. So, you know, and with a will, I called probate court years ago and I asked them exactly what does constitute a will. They said as long as it is dated, it is signed, and it is witnessed by two people that are unrelated, that constitutes a legal and binding will. Now, I always say this though. If you have a complicated situation where you have a lot of property or estates and things like that, then definitely you may want to consult with a lawyer for that, you know, because they would know better to how to word it. But like if it's something simple and you don't have a lot of things, then you could do a simple will. And in that way, you know, all you have to do is go to probate and they will make sure that things are carried out the way that they're supposed to be. Because in a will, you have named a personal representative, somebody that's going to be the one that's going to handle all of these things. So you wouldn't have to deal with the, you know, I don't want to sign this denunciation letter. I don't want her to be the person's representative. You've gotten rid of all of that. You don't have to worry about that at all. Another thing, like with bank accounts and things like that. See, I try to let you know a lot of stuff that you got to think about because a lot of people don't realize that when someone passes, you have got a ton of decisions that have got to be made. With bank accounts, you know, if you say, oh, well, I got a joint account with my daddy or whoever. Well, the thing is, when daddy passes, the bank's going to freeze that account. And you're not going to be able to get access to that money until you go to probate court. But if the account is set up as joint tenants with rights of survivorship, or if you name a beneficiary on that bank account, then whoever the beneficiary is, all they would have to do is get a certified copy of the death certificate, take it to the bank, and they would remove that person's name off of that account, and that's the end of the story. You would not have to deal with probate court regarding that. Just like with life insurance. If you name a beneficiary, like a person as a beneficiary, then that's not part of the estate. Only if the beneficiary is the estate you would have to deal with probate court on that matter. Just like with homes. If you have, I think it's called a life estate, where if you have your name and maybe a child's name or somebody, your loved one's name on there, set up that if you pass, then the house automatically goes to them, where you wouldn't even have to deal with probate court. Or if you set up a trust, that's another way to avoid probate, and you wouldn't have to deal with, you know, the 8-month period of probate. So those are things that, you know, I try to let people know that if you can get that stuff done ahead of time, so that way there's no guesswork. You know, we don't know where mama got. I know she got a bank account, but we don't know, you know, we don't know what's in it. We don't know because she won't talk to us. I can't, I'm sorry, y'all. I just can't repeat it enough just to please have your house in order. It just makes things flow so much easier. And I'm trying to think if there was something else I wanted to tell you as well. As far as cemeteries, like burying, you know, you have the option of prepaying for a grave. If you wanted to bury, like here in RockHill, we have like Grandview Memorial Park, RockHill Memorial Gardens, and we also have Barbara Memorial Cemetery. You can prepay for those graves. You can put some money down and then they pay us every month to get that taken care of. So there are things that you can do to prepare. And I think that's it. Thank you so very much for listening. And if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to contact me. I'm at Robinson Funeral Home. God bless and thank you.
Thank you.
Now, you have had some ladies up here that they don't play. They went through their items very well. I received some information that I didn't know about, you know, the estate planning part, because now it makes me need to tweak some things with my will to make sure that, you know, that I take care of things. And the information that has been given out today, we are live, by the way. You can go back and look at this video again. Contact these ladies. Ms. Margaret McFadden. Your phone number is on here, 803-526-7579 for Margaret McFadden, LPCS, LCMHC. That's a whole lot of stuff. That means she's a licensed counselor. We will have brochures up here. I have some information for mental health through NAMI, and also Brown Clinical Services, who will be with us today. She left some items for you. The two counselors will be, and Ms. Tiffany. Oh, my bad. Ms. Tiffany Huggins. I'm going to pick up on her by name. Same licenses. they are here to make appointments. If you need to make an appointment with them, that's a private matter. If you don't want to do it right now, they have 2 rooms set up that you can go back and make appointments with them. And Miss Monique, I'm going to tell you something. Funeral homes deal with a lot of stuff in our community. I know, like Parker and Robinson Funeral Home, they make some arrangements. They work with our community. But no, when you don't pre-plan and make plans, you put burden not only on your family, but you come to the funeral home with a hustle in mind. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You had no idea. She already told you that GoFundMe is not insurance. But we'll also go up there and say, we ain't got no insurance. We ain't got no insurance. Can I make some arrangements? And then you go get a death certificate. You have insurance. You go cash the insurance out for your money. You get the money. That's a terrible thing to do, number one. You're putting the burden on the funeral home by making them do a payment arrangement. You actually have insurances. That's just wrong. But it happens all the time. We have different children who have insurance on their parents. They'll let that one child pay for it and they'll pocket the money. You know, I understand that you pay for it, but don't put undue burden on your family members. We are a family. And you'll be held accountable for that, just in case you was wondering. You know, God don't like it. Okay? So God don't like it. And we see that happen a lot as a minister. I know things like that happen. People come back to me all the time. You would not believe it happened. Oh, actually, I would. And make sure that, you know, this 5 wishes. And this thing is so thorough. This is actually very thorough. Get it to your family members and work on this together. If you can get this done, this makes things so much easier. I wish I had these things, but I had the conversations with my parents before they passed, and it made things easier for me. Imagine how it is if someone passes all of a sudden, and you are totally unprepared. You know, so having these directives done, and how many grandparents in here, nobody can see this, have insurance on their grandkids? I do. On my children. But I'm sorry, I have insurance on my children. But I'm going to get some insurance on my grandchildren. You know why? Because funerals are getting more expensive. You know, that back in the day when that insurance man used to come knocking on the door. Insurance man. And he come and get that check and that payment and put it in a little envelope. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Right. And then when you go to the funeral home with that little thing and you find out you only got $1,000 worth of insurance and you've been paying for it for 35 years. You know, had you been reviewing that and talking to your children about that over time, you'd have found out that you've depleted it. You had a term life that depleted and it have, it has no value. Imagine that your funeral home director has to tell you that this has a $250 value. I'm going to need $6,250 outside of that $250. And that's because our parents over time, they thought they were secure. But back in the day, they were being hustled. Amen. Insurance, they hustled, especially in the Black community, they were hustled. Okay? So go back and look at your policy. Go back and see if your riders are still your riders. Because if you had insurance on your grandkids, and you find out that once they became a certain age and they didn't pick up their insurance, they're not uninsured. You go to bury them and your rider is no longer a rider. I'm just telling you from family experience. So take the time. Care for yourself. But then, in caring for yourself, you're also caring for others. Cannot reiterate enough. In caring for yourself, you are caring for others. I don't want to leave any burden. Oh, by the way, Monique, I want a military funeral casket with a shield on it. Nobody can dress me in pink. Because y'all know I don't like pink like that.
Watch out now.
You know,
watch out.
My military blue, they don't have enough of Zeta Phi Beta in it. I want to make sure that I have a good clean haircut and make sure y'all don't put all that makeup on me.
We don't do that.
Dead in my casket.
We don't do that.
Okay, so, all right, we have all these wishes, but what is that? Nothing of value. That benefits nobody. You know, everybody know not to bury me in pink. That's a given. That is my funeral director. But I'm being funny about it, but there's no laughing matter when it comes to taking care of yourself.
That's right.
You know, and my hair, who cares about your hair right now? I need you to put all that in the little blue book. Check your insurance policies. Make a will. Know what you want. And trust somebody to carry out your wishes.
Yeah.
If you are one of 12, somebody in there, you should be confident enough to tell, this is who's going to be the executive of my estate. This is the person who I want to carry out my wishes. Don't have just one person, but have an alternate person, because tomorrow is not promised. And you made your will and you made your executive someone who's passed over. What benefit is that? I don't know how it works. Okay? So always go back and review. Go back and look at things. Talk to your insurance agent. Don't be scared of them. Don't let them intimidate you to find out if you are good.
That's right.
And go and make those arrangements prior to. Okay? Now, I'm going to get right back to self-care. Isn't that part of self-care? Mm-hmm. Isn't that part of taking care of your mental health and being kind to your mind? That's what it is. All right. We want to thank Ms. Monique, Ms. McFadden, Ms. Huggins, my videographer over here, all of those who have come. But I have a couple of gifts that I would like to give to my wonderful presenters. Come on up, ladies. All right, this is Margaret. I'll be specific. She know what we do. That is for you. This is Monique. If somebody has a camera, can somebody take a picture of us, all of us together, so she can get that picture. See, she's both part of it. All right. Thank you, ladies. We have a lot of brochures and documents. You can pick those up on your way out. If you need to make some arrangements and appointments with the professional counselor, you may do so. You can do it in private in the back. Nobody's coming in your business. And I thank you all for coming out. Thank my sorority sisters for showing up. I just want to let y'all know that we hope to do this again in the fall for our youth. It'll be youth oriented because who else faces grief?
They do.
Young
Yes.
people.
Yes.
So we want to do this after our back to school bash. We're part of our back to school bash. We want to do this for our youth. We want to encourage others to come out. If you would like this done at your church, I can offer tips on how to get this done at your church. Those are Facebook land. If you want to have this done at your church, just contact me, inbox me, and I can have this done at your church. And I'm sure my counselors and my funeral home director, owner, extraordinaire. She carries so many. She wears so many hats. I'm always picking on her. But we would love the opportunity to share the gifts that God has given us to help others to grow, to know and to grow. Thank you all. And I'm going to ask Deacon Knox if he will come up and have our closing prayer. Are there any questions at this time, or we're going to go offline? Okay. You got to be loud so I can hear you.
Okay, you mentioned something earlier about personally, like you said about tweaking your wheel. I mean, I didn't know tweaking your wheel. That's something especially personally.
Yes, you can definitely modify your wheel. If you have a wheel, you need to. That's why I say you review it and you modify it accordingly. Because, like I said, if you wrote a wheel 20 years ago and maybe somebody who was in your wheel has passed on, you need to make another person in there or to close in the gap. If somebody like, for instance. If I left it to my dad, some things to my dad, I would have to go in here and modify that. So it's annually going and checking your will and tweaking it is a very important thing to do because things change and laws change. Mm-hmm. So, having a lawyer looking over your will, I don't know how much they charge, or having somebody who's a professional, a funeral home director might be able to look at some things and say, hey, red flag. But that's being proactive. Go ahead, Mom.